When I was young, I used to always hear old people say, "You ain't finna run me into an early grave." And you know what? I think I figured out the solution. So stay tuned. Tip number two, tip number two. All right. Tip number two. Hi everyone, welcome back to Day by Day with Early B.
Hi.
This message, I'm specifically talking to the young adults out there because I just feel like y'all will feel where I'm coming from. And you know what? I have 4 steps for you on how to manage others' expectations.
Wow.
Step 1, figure out what is the expectations. As a young adult, I know myself, things get thrown my way from left and right, whether that's why don't you have a husband? Why don't you have kids? Why don't you have a house that you own? Don't you know this? Don't you know that? It's overwhelming. Okay. So the first step is figuring out what is it that's being placed upon you. And how you define that what depends on who you are. Try to listen. I know that's very, very hard because sometimes you really just be in a groove of living and then something gets thrown your way and you may catch 1 or 2 words that may mix up into a totally different message than what it actually is. So it's imperative that you identify what is the expectation. Okay, now you need to figure out who is delivering this message that I must take heed to. Many different people in this world. There could be salespeople, which in my opinion is very easy, cutthroat and dry. If I don't want it, I won't get it. Now those people can be pushy, and for me, on the other hand, you have individuals that you just must listen to depending on your culture or how your respect is lined up. For instance, guardians and mothers and fathers, they tell you to do something. You can't necessarily just be like, "Nah, ma, get out my face. I ain't trying to listen to none of that." Like, I don't know if your people not judging you, but I understand there's a different level of respect. And when it comes to those more sensitive relationships, and then we can go ahead and lump in managers, we can lump in best friends and individuals whom you can't easily say no to, and you may have to provide a reason to, and they're expecting a reason as to why you would reject. Definitely take that into consideration. But once you figured out the what and what you figured out the who, now you can marry those together and come back and revisit what. Now, I know I said that it was going to be 4 steps, and technically step 3 is going back to step 1, but going back to step 1 is very important. You figured out what the expectation that has been laid on you is. Now you figured out who is laying this expectation on you. And now with that, figure out why do you feel the way that you feel. Now, when I'm discussing feelings, I'm not negating that you may just naturally have negative feelings towards something. And I'm also not negating the fact that sometimes you're just all in with an idea and a decision that's been made by someone that you love and that you respect, and you just want to meet their expectations. You don't want to let those people down. But just like the other 2 steps, step 3, revisiting the what and figuring out why you feel the way that you feel about the subject is imperative to how that you're going to grow and with a little bit more experience. So let's take, for example, that the what is, why don't you have a husband, kids, and a house by now at the age of 27? Putting a little bit of my personal in there. All right, example, set on stage. The what is, why don't you have kids, a husband, and a house at the age of 27. Now, the who, let's say my dear old mother, who is at the tender age of, let's say, 55 years old. All right, revisiting the what, I understand that I generally just feel some type of hesitation towards getting married, having a child, and owning a home. I understand that my mother is the person who's placing this expectation on me, but I also can understand now that she's just probably wanting me to have more than what she had.
Aww.
Maybe by the time that she was 27, she feels like if she would have had X, Y, and Z, that at the tender age of 55, that she may be a little bit further along or better off. You have to have those conversations and communicate those things with your loved ones and figure out things. But before you can even figure out things, you need to figure out, why do you feel that way? What is this feeling? Sometimes it may take a couple of days, and that's something else that a lot of people, I think, fail to realize, that as individuals, we process things. And my process doesn't necessarily have to be at the same speed of your process, okay? And that is perfectly fine. All that you can do is say, hey, I've heard what you said. Give me some time to think on it. What is the earliest time that you need this answer by? Because there are some time sensitive expectations, and go from there. Now, once you revisit the what, it is imperative to communicate. Communicate. All right, you heard me? You have to communicate. Whether you know the right words, draw it out. Practice it beforehand. I'll say definitely go back and revisit steps 1 through 3. What is this expectation? Who is putting this expectation upon me? And revisiting the what, so I can figure out and divvy up my feelings towards it. You don't necessarily have to just go with whatever someone places into your life, even if they're doing it with a cloth of protection and love. You still, as an individual, have the right to digest what is being bestowed upon you, because it is your time and effort that should be paid towards this expectation. Make sure that you fulfill it. It's someone else's time and effort to place this expectation onto you, but you know your bandwidth. You know how much time that you have and how much dedication and passion that you have within yourself for this thing that someone's bestowing upon you. Okay? So, with communicating, I'll do a full-fledged video on communicating hard messages, but you need to communicate things verbally. Like, nonverbal skills definitely tell a story, but to effectively tell what you're feeling and what you have identified and reconciled with your time and energy, you need to do that verbally. First, I would advise by reiterating what the ask is. Put it into your own words so that the recipient understands that this is what you heard. Now, if it's something that was incorrect, allow for that individual to correct it and digest it and adjust accordingly. But again, go forward with reiterating and identifying how you received the message. Once you've done that, you can insert your yay or nay stance. So if you're going forward, for example, hi mother, I understand that you'd like for me to have a husband, a child, and a house at 27. And I completely agree with you. I'll work on that. Or, I understand you want me to have a child, a husband, and a house at the age of 27. But I'm just here to tell you that that's not going to happen. That gives me anxiety, and it doesn't make me want to go towards those things, having you asked in the way that you have. All right, you see how I applied what I was feeling, what this made me feel as, and why? And when it comes to something that you like, people are more so looking for you to like what they've expected of you and just go for it. So they're not really looking for those extra details. But when you are turning someone down, it is an extra cushion and help towards that individual to understand why you're turning it down. Now, for people who are dealing with pushy individuals, my next video, communicating hard messages, would definitely go into depth about that. But for the purposes of this, you can simply state that this is your stance and nothing is changing about it. Or you can give them a leeway and say that I'll give you a window of time to provide me with additional details that will change my mind. If you haven't changed my mind by X date, then my stance still stand. That's a tongue twister. But like I'm saying, what I said is what I said. All right, now get kind of difficult depending on who you're talking to, but definitely check out my next video. Like, subscribe, and comment on this video, and I promise to have more details for you. But use those 4 tips that I gave you to manage others' expectations. To reiterate, number 1, it is figuring out what is being asked of you. Number 2, who is asking it. Number 3, revisit what is being asked of you, apply the who, and figure out how do you feel about it, whether negative or positive. How do you feel about it? And 4, communicate your stance. Communicate, communicate, communicate. If you're open for swaying of your decision, specify that, communicate that, vocalize that, say that. All right? If you're not open, do everything that I just said. Say that, communicate that, vocalize that, speak up for yourself, because no one understands what's going on in your head. And it's your responsibility to let others know. Now, don't go off on a tangent and tell them too much. I'll get into more details about communication in the next video, but be direct and let them know that you've applied the steps that you've needed to apply to digest and figure out if you have the bandwidth and can fulfill their expectations, so that you're not overwhelmed and feeling like life is just too much as a young adult. Because I promise you, for some of us, we have many years ahead of us, and at the age of 27, I'm not finna let you run me into an early grave. All right, bye. Peace and love, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video, and watch out for any other videos that are coming out to help you get by your day, because we can only do it day by day. Thank you. Bye.